Appreciate the time. Good to see you again.
It's good to see you also.
It's like, as you said, it's been a remarkable show of unity, not just from the players, but the leagues outside of basketball. And an amazing moment at Mets Marlins last night. What do you think this week has meant to sports and to social justice in this country?
Well, I think it's been a historical moment for social justice and also in sport. When you have all of the leagues coming together organically, speaking to systemic racism and truly calling for a stop not only to police brutality, but also the racial injustice that all families are now seeing play out on television, not only see play out on television, but most of the sports personalities that are in these different playing fields, their families are affected by this systemic racism, this police brutality. So the leagues coming together and calling out and having what I would call a work stoppage, very similar to what we saw in the Montgomery work stoppage in the 60s with Martin Luther King, in terms of us trying to get America's attention to say, hey, what is happening is wrong here.
It's true. And you know, long history of Ali and Arthur Ashe and Bill Russell this week, remembering when he was young. And yet you listen to Chris Webber, an emotional statement that he gave, I think, to ESPN, in which he said, these are large actions, but you can't expect things to change right away. What do you think expectations are right now?
You know, this is the 57 years ago today, MLK, and there was a march on Washington. And what they were asking for then, 57 years ago, was that we end systemic racism and the oppressiveness of the Black community by not only the legal system, the educational system, the health system, and also our government. Was asking 57 years ago to let us have an equal opportunity in terms of the American dream. So when you look at the numbers, 60% of the Black population right now is living below poverty line, not even at the poverty line, but living below the poverty line. I grew up living below the poverty line. So I speak from my experiences. I also speak from my observation now. And what I see that's happening in our country is eerily very similar to what we were marching and fighting against back in the 60s, the 50s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, now we're in the 2000s. So when the question is said, well, why don't you wait? We've been waiting for centuries now for us to have this conversation about the oppressive systemic system that Blacks are forced to live under in this country.
Isaiah, it's David Faber, specific to the NBA players. Yesterday, we had the president's son-in-law and special advisor, Jared Kushner, on our network, and he said the following, and I'd like you to respond. He said, quote, the NBA players are very fortunate that they have the financial position where they're able to take a night off from work without having to have the consequences to themselves financially. What's your response to that?
You know, I would say this. The NBA players are fortunate. The NFL players are fortunate economically because they can afford to lose money, but to bring voice to the voiceless. So, and that's what this is all about in terms of sports and entertainment. And when you talk about the classified Blacks in this country, we are allowed to have what we call a platform now through sports and entertainment. But historically, the use of that platform was to give voice to the voiceless. So what has been termed a night off was really a work stoppage and a boycott to bring attention to what is happening in our America. And when I say our America, I'm talking black and white. This is America. And first, we are all Americans. And then we are put down into these racial categories of black and white. But first, we are Americans.